Are you a monogamous knitter or are you a promiscuous knitter? Do you like to have one project on the go or lots of projects on the go? Welcome to today's video. My name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website yarnaddict.co.uk. You can find all my links and social media and everything else down below this video, including links to sign up to my newsletter. And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Ravelry, Facebook. Got a Facebook group, Love of Lace Knitting, various places, and all those links are below this video. A little bit of a fun, light-hearted topic today. I'm going to talk about whether we like having one project on the go or lots of projects on the go, and the pros and cons of each of those. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It helps me a lot if you like my videos, if you would subscribe, and if you give the video a thumbs up and leave me a comment. It just helps more people to see the video, and it doesn't cost you anything, so thank you very much in advance for that. So today I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of having one project on the go compared to having lots of projects on the go. So I have kind of titled this, Are you a monogamous or promiscuous knitter? I am kind of taking this in a little bit of a kind of fun, I'm meaning this in a little bit of a fun kind of way, so please don't take it too seriously. You do whatever you want to do. Whether you like to have one project on the go or lots of projects on the go probably depends on your circumstances, your personality, what makes you stressed out. For some people, having lots of projects on the go can make them really stressed out and give them like a real sense of kind of overwhelm. For other people, they don't really care and they're not bothered about finishing anything. So you do whatever suits you and your personality and your circumstances. Let me know what your preferences are in the comments, but keep it nice and polite, please, and don't be judgmental of other people's points of views, please. So back in my younger years, in my teens and in my 20s, I used to buy yarn for one project, knit it, and then buy yarn for another project. My only stash was yarn left over from previous projects. My mum's the same. She would buy, and I think she still does, buy yarn for a project, and then when she's finished that, she'll buy yarn for the next project. And her stash is leftover yarn from various projects. Plus, I think the old ball of sock yarn that I've given her over the years. But mostly her yarn stash is quite small, but it's mainly leftover yarns from previous projects that she has completed. And I used to be the same, and then I discovered the online knitting world, and I discovered that people had yarn stashes and people would buy yarn without any idea what they were going to knit with them, and I thought that sounds like fun. And yes, I may have indulged in a bit of stash enhancing, and you can actually see my stash because it's a bit further that way, but I have like I have two Kallax cubbyholes in my personal stash, and then I have one Kallax cubbyhole which I left over yarns from magazine designs. So I only have two cubbyholes. So one cubbyhole is like two of those shells there. I only have two of those. So it'd be equivalent of that bit as a personal yarn stash, which I don't think is that bad. I know my yarn room or my office looks like it has a lot more yarn in it, but that's because I sell yarn as well. So a lot of my shelves are actually full of yarn I sell, not my own personal stash. So I don't think I'm that bad when it comes to my yarn stash. In the past, I have had more at some points. I've tried to be better over the last few years and buy less. and I have tried to destash something a couple of times. So I try and have like a yearly yarn tidy up and destash stuff. And there is, at the time of filming this, there is some stuff on my website that I am currently destashing. There's only a few bits left from my last destash, but the link to that will be below this video as well. So when I discovered that people had yarn stashes, and then I also discovered that a lot of people had more than one project on the go. So I thought, that sounds like a fun thing to do. I'm not going to talk about the stash or not to stash in this video. We'll leave that for another time. But I do want to stick to just talking about whether or not to have one or multiple projects on the go at any one time. And like I said earlier, you do what's best for you. If having lots of projects stresses you out, then that's fine. If you're the sort of person who needs to have more than one project on the go for whatever reason, that's fine too. So let's look at having one project at a time on the needles and some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. So the advantages are that you make progress quicker and you finish the project quicker. So I've been doing this a lot lately in the last, well, few years really, with magazine designs. If I get a commission for a yarn company or a magazine, I have a deadline, and quite often that deadline will be quite short, so I need to finish that project relatively quickly, and I try then to just focus on that, and I find when I do that I actually finish it quicker. If you stick to one project and you knit on it regularly, it's easy to remember what you were doing and where you were in that project when you pick it up. And you spend less time, or you waste less time each time you pick up your knitting, trying to work out where in the pattern you are, what you were doing, and remembering anything that you may have forgotten about shaping, where you were, pattern repeats, stitch patterns, things like that. So those, I think, are the two main advantages to me to having one project at a time. If you have anything else to add to that, please leave it in the comments. Disadvantages of one project at the time, for me, is that you may get bored and fancy a change. I find this happens a lot. I get bored with a project and I fancy a bit of a change. Your current project may not be suitable for all the places and circumstances that you like to knit. We'll come back to that later, but things like out and about knitting, TV knitting, alone, being able to concentrate knitting, coffee shop, pub knitting, knitting at sports events, cinema, things like that. You probably lose track of where you are in the projects easier. So if you knit on something and then you put it down, you don't pick it up for a few days, weeks, months. You spend a bit of time working out where you are. I have a sweater, so my longest running project that I haven't ripped out is a project that I cast on for my husband. It's a sweater for my husband. I either cast it on for our 20th wedding anniversary or for my 40th birthday. For both of those, we went to Spain to stay in my parents' flat in Spain, and they're both around the same time of year, early autumn, late summer, early autumn. And they're only 2 years apart, I think. Yeah, something like that. So I'm not sure which one it was. If it was our 20th wedding anniversary, then that's 12 years ago. If it was my 40th birthday, that's nearly 14 years ago. So yeah, I started a sweater for my husband. I remember I had decided, well, he chose the pattern. It was a Debbie Bliss raglan cardigan pattern. I think it was a cardigan. Yeah, it was a cardigan, not a sweater. And we decided we were going to do it in King Cole Merino Blend, King Cole Merino Blend DK, because he felt like the yarn that he was knitted in, which I think was Cash Merino by Debbie Bliss, was too expensive. And I was teaching at Spinny Yarn in Bobby Tracy, and I wanted to buy the yarn because I knew they stocked it, but they didn't have it in stock when I was there. So I ordered it, and I actually picked it up on the way to the airport. We were flying from Exeter Airport, and I remember we stopped off there on the way and picked it up, and I took, not all of it, but maybe half of it with me. These days, I would not have enough room in my carry-on suitcase to take that much yarn on holiday with me. My holiday projects tend to be a lot smaller. That's a whole another video. So that's my longest running project. I knitted on it a lot on holiday, and maybe a little bit after I came home. I think I finished the back, and maybe one front or part of the front is a raglan cardigan, and I think it would be better if it was knitted all in one piece. I also think it would be better if I designed it myself, because then I would have the incentive to finish it. It's also in navy blue yarn, which is not the most fun thing to knit with, and it's all stocking stitch. And I still have it somewhere, but I haven't looked at it for a while, and I don't know whether it's still in a fit state to be knitted, or if I have all the rest of the yarn, and if I have the pattern. Every year in the autumn, I think I should get it out and try and finish it for Christmas. I don't know whether it would fit my husband now, because he has lost and gained weight a few times since then. So I don't even know whether it would fit him anymore. But the thought of getting it out and trying to work out where I am in the pattern and what I was doing, especially if I can't find the pattern, is just puts me off doing it. So every year I'm thinking I really should get it out and finish it in time for Christmas. But also autumn is my busiest time in terms of workshops, and then with design deadlines on top of that, autumn is very, very busy for me. So most of the time I just leave it too close to Christmas, and I think, oh, I'll do it next year. And I have still not finished it, so maybe I should get on with that one of these days. If you see my husband in shows, don't ask him about it, please, because you'll get me in trouble. Anyway, he does tease me about it once in a while, but so let's go on to more than one project at a time. So some of the advantages of having more than one project is that you have a project for all occasions. Whether you are knitting while watching television, you might be knitting while watching something which has subtitles and you need to concentrate. You may be watching something like the news or something fairly light-hearted where you don't really need to concentrate and you don't need to look at the screen all the time. You may want to go knit at the cinema. You might be meeting a friend and you want to try and keep eye contact so they think you're not focusing on your knitting but focusing on them, even though we do listen with our ears, not with our eyes, but that's a whole nother thing. You might want to knit out and about. You might want to knit in the car if you're not driving. Loads of situations where you might want to knit, and not all projects are suitable to all those occasions. So having something that's suitable for one thing but not another, it's good to have more than one project, in my opinion. You may also like to alternate between knitting and crochet, and like I can knit a lot of stuff without looking at it. I do have to look at colour work and some brioche and some lace knitting, but if I crochet I have to look at it more than I look at my knitting. But it also depends on what I'm knitting, obviously. You can knit on what you fancy, so that's another advantage. If you fancy doing socks, you can knit on socks. If I'm tired and I don't really want to concentrate, then I'll just pick up my socks or my crochet blanket or something that's fairly easy. If I got to a point in one of my projects where I have to make a decision, or where there's a bit more difficult thing coming up, or I have to write the next bit of the pattern or something like that, then I'll quite often put that down and pick up something easier. Sometimes I want to knit on something that's a bit more engaging, so something that makes me concentrate a bit more, because then it's easier to like block everything else out, if you like. And sometimes that's the kind of project I need. So there are different things that I like to knit on at different points in the time, in the day, in the week, in my life. So I like having several different projects for that reason. You get less bored. If you get bored with your knitting, put it down and pick up something else. That's another advantage of having more than one project at a time. Disadvantages. Projects can easily be forgotten about, or you lose interest in it. It can easily get out of control and you have too many projects on the go. I don't know what the maximum project I've had on the go at any one time. Every so often, when I have a clear out, so most of my knitting projects are on the go, live next to my knitting chair in the lounge, and it's kind of like a corner next to my chair, kind of between my chair and the sofa and two walls, so it's a little bit of a corner. And every so often I need to clear out in there and hoover the floor and things. So then I pull out all my knitting projects, and if it's something that I haven't worked on for a long time and I know I'm not going to work on it, I will pull it out. Sometimes I will unravel it. Sometimes I will just put my needle and stitch markers out and bin it. Just depends on what it is. I had one yarn, can't remember what the yarn was called, but it was a very special yarn. And I don't know how many times I started something and pulled it out, and in the end I just binned it, because I thought this has been just started and pulled out so many times because I couldn't decide what I wanted to knit with it, and it was really nice yarn. It is easier if you have lots of projects on the go, or even just 2 projects on the go, to lose track of where you are in each project. So the more projects you have on the go, the easier I think it is to lose track of where you are in your project. If I haven't knitted on something for a number of days, when I sit down and pick it up, I then spend a certain amount of time, depending on the project, working out where in the pattern I am, what I was doing, am I in the middle of shaping, what's the stitch pattern, things like that. Whereas if I pick it up and put it down each time I sit down to knit, I'm more likely to remember where I was, and I don't have to keep referring to the pattern all the time. And the longer I've not knitted on something, the longer it'll take me to get back into the project again. So I think that's one of the main disadvantages for having multiple projects for me. And also, when you have lots of projects on the go, it takes you longer to finish each project, so you feel like you're making less progress. You may be somebody who likes that kind of sense of achievement that you get from finishing something, and if you have lots of projects on the go that you alternate between, it may be months between finishing a project, and it may give you less of a sense of achievement. You may feel a bit like you're getting fed up because you don't feel like you're achieving anything. So I think that's all down to do with your personality. So my current situation is that I like to have one project that I focus on, I spend most of my time working on, and that is quite often a magazine design or a design for a yarn company, something like that. My current magazine design usually. And then I like to have another focus and then I like to have another project that's a bit easier, that I can just pick up and put down when I feel like it. Stuff that I can knit on the go, knit in the cinema, nipping out and about, nipping seeing friends, things like that. If I just don't want to concentrate, or I need a smaller project. And that tends to be a sock. So I quite often have a plain sock on the go. When I first started knitting socks again, so I knitted socks as a teenager and I hated it. And when I got back into knitting socks again in my 30s, I guess, I tried knitting a plain sock and I thought, this is really boring. And I had to knit patterned socks. The sock had to have some kind of stitch pattern that would keep me engaged. Now I actually rarely knit socks with stitch patterns. I might do a rib or some kind of combination of rib, like alternating rib or something like that, but most of the time it's either just a plain 2x2 rib or stocking stitch. And that's because I tend to use socks more as an out and about project, knitting in the cinema, knitting when seeing friends, knitting when doing something else, and I don't want to have to concentrate on it. So then keeping it simple works better for me. I do often find that I'm halfway through a project, maybe something I'm planning to self-publish or knit for myself or something like that, and then I get a design submission either for a yarn company or a magazine, and I have to put down what I was knitting on and focus on that design submission because it has a deadline attached to it, and quite often it's a short deadline. And by the time I finished that, I've forgotten about a project I was working on, and I think, oh, I finished something, I can cast on something else now. So I pick up and cast on something else and forget what I was working on before I did the deadline design. The example is the shawl that I cast on when I went to YarnAddict in 2021. So YarnAddict is at the end of September 2021. I cast on for a new shawl. I had an idea in my head for a new shawl design. I cast on, I knitted nearly half the shawl, I think, at YarnAddict during the YarnAddict kind of nearly a week I was away, or 5 days or so I was away, because it was fairly easy and it was smaller at that point. And then when I came back from YarnAddict that year, within a few days I went to Spain to see my parents, and the project was a little bit too big to take to Spain. I would have had to take more yarn to finish it, and I also got to a point where in the project where I didn't know what I was going to do next, because I hadn't planned out the whole project in advance. I planned out the beginning and then I had an idea for where I wanted to go, but I hadn't written that bit down or written the pattern for that bit. So I was about to go to Spain, and I just picked up something else to work on in Spain that was smaller. And then when I came back, because it was autumn, there was loads of workshops and busyness, and then we went away to Norway for Christmas, and then I took something else to work on, and so on and so on and so on, and all through 2022, or I guess beginning of 2022, I occasionally would pick up that project when I finished something. I think I should finish this. But every time I picked it up, I was like, what did I plan to do the second half of the show? I can't remember. And now I've kind of got to a point where I don't really care if I finish it. I haven't ripped it out yet because I was still going to finish it. It is in a yarn that I stock in my online shop. But it is a yarn that I think I've decided I'm not going to stock any longer. And my current supply of that yarn, I don't have too much left, is for sale. And if I finish that pattern and display it at the next show I do, I feel like I have to get more of that yarn, and the yarn's not that popular, so I don't know if I can be bothered to finish it. I do like that if I really concentrate on project and spend most of my time on one project, that I finish it quicker. It does give me a sense of achievement, and I do realize that I can finish a garment fairly quickly if I just focus on it and stick to that and don't get distracted by other things. But I also get easily bored. I usually about 3/4 through a project, unless it's a very small project, but usually about 3/4 through a project, I get bored, and if I don't have a deadline, it's easy to put it down, thinking I'll start something else and then I'll get back to it. Just give myself a couple of days, maybe a weekend, to knit on something else, then I'll get back to what I was working on. And quite often I will put it down, cast on something else, and then forget about my original project. So that is a problem that I know I have, that I get easily bored and I fancy knitting on something else. So for me, having fewer projects works better. If I have too many projects, I don't feel like it's out of control or scattered, but I know that I tend to, in recent years, focus on one main project and then have like one smaller, easier kind of side project. And I do find that that seems to work best for me. So let me know, what do you think about this? Do you like having one project on the go? Do you like having lots of projects on the go? Somebody I follow on YouTube, I'm not going to say who, but I think last count, they may have had about 30 projects on the go. For me, that would give, I mean, I don't get anxious that easily, but for me, I think that would give me a slight sense of anxiety personally. They seem fine about it, which is great. So let me know what you think. Are you a one project kind of knitter, or are you a multiple project kind of knitter? Tell me in the comments what you like. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember that all my social media links and link to sign up to our newsletter is in the description box below. And I hope you liked this video. Click the like or thumbs up button if you liked it, and leave me a comment, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.